DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We're joined by former BYU basketball coach Steve Cleveland. Steve, good morning.
Morning, fellas.
So, Steve, we want to talk to you this morning about coaching, and watching all this go down with the football coaches and who stays and who goes to Michigan with Kyle and the hard feelings. I remember talking to Dave Rose when the first hint of you going, it was just a hint of you maybe going to Fresno, and Dave saying, I don't know. And I said, well, this happens and then that. And he says, well, if he actually does go, if this is all true, then it's every coach for themselves. And it was just so cold-blooded. And I knew you two had a deep personal relationship. You'd known each other. You had a million stories, a million laughs, a million probably agonies as well. Looking at each other going into halftime, like, what are we going to say to these guys now? And you got all of that. But then when you get to that point where it is everybody for themselves, personal relationships and feelings can go up. How do you juggle that and all the people that you've known across coaching you've seen probably in situations like this? Because I think people are trying to understand how this has happened with Kyle and why people would go with him and why people would stay and how you balance it's like they say in The Godfather, it's business.
It is business. You know what? It's interesting because I've listened to a little bit of it as well and read some stuff in the papers and how people are upset about him leaving and this and that. It doesn't make sense. What an opportunity for him, and an opportunity to go to obviously a blue blood university in Michigan. I think what we tend to forget sometimes is all the amazing things that Kyle did at Utah. And I think that obviously Utah's had a great program and done well. Michigan is another level, another step. And I just don't think people should take it so personally. I mean, what would you do if you were in his seat and making those kinds of decisions? I mean, it's a no-brainer for me. And it doesn't take anything away from his love for Utah. And the thing about Kyle, he is a really, really genuine, authentic person. And not everyone is that. And the thing about Kyle that I've always loved, and when I first started coaching, he made an effort to come in and introduce himself to me. And I didn't know anybody when I came to BYU. Here's the guy that's at University of Utah, and met him at a meeting and at a luncheon. And I've always had good feelings about Kyle and that being a very genuine, authentic individual. I've always appreciated him about that. And I think people need to just take a step back, take a breath, and just relax. Hey, let's just reflect on the amazing things this man has done while he was at Utah, and it's an opportunity for him, for his family, and to take it to another level. And it's not to say that Utah or BYU or whoever it is isn't deserving of having the very best coach they can have, but I think Kyle made a great decision. He's taken some guys with him. And that's just part of the process. And people want to take it personal, then let them deal with it. But it's nonsense to think that Kyle wouldn't take it, that he wouldn't take coaches from other staffs. And that's part of the business, and get used to it.
I can remember when you were going to Fresno. I mean, you were like the first guy. Oh my gosh, BYU coaches don't leave, and Steve Cleveland is leaving BYU. What is he thinking? And obviously that was home for you, and you had other situations and financial packages which made sense. And a little funny story is, I thought, well, Dave Rose is the guy, right? And so I think your story broke like on a Thursday or Friday. I remember it was a Saturday, and I was in Arizona visiting family, but that turned out to be a work trip. And so I call him on Saturday, and he must have saw my number and figured, I can't talk to this guy. But he didn't click it all the way, right? And he was in his car, and I could hear the radio. And I thought, well, I'll just wait this out. He's going to he'll pick up the phone at some point, and I'll still be on the line. He does not know that he didn't hang up completely. And I can't remember. It was probably at least 20 minutes, maybe even longer. I was just sitting there, and he was in the car, obviously driving somewhere. I figured it couldn't have been far. And sure enough, he goes to pick up the phone, and he thinks he's dialing, and hello, and it's still me. And so he then realized, said, Dave, I know you looked at my number and said, oh, I can't talk to him now. But anyway, I talked to him, and I said, whatever you tell me here, I got too much invested in this. I'm not going to burn you, and I think most people know. And that was 20 years ago, and obviously 20 years later, they know I'm not going to burn him. And we talked about the job, and clearly he wanted it, and we all thought he was the right man for the job, and obviously Tom ended up giving it to him. So it's just a little funny story I thought I'd share. But I'm thinking about all these guys now that from Utah and from BYU are going to go to Michigan, and there's probably a good chance that many of these dudes have never been there, and they're going to be introduced. It's going to be so overwhelming, and I was wondering if you could share your experience when you went from Fresno to Provo. At least you had been to Provo, at least probably some, but how overwhelming, or how was it in terms of just, here's the job, and I got to meet all these people. I got to move. I got to get a place to stay. I got to get the electricity on. That seems like, man, that is just an overwhelming situation for these coaches that they have to go into with their families, and particularly if they have young kids, which you had younger kids at the time too.
Yeah. Well, let me just speak for a moment about, BYU. And it was such a unique situation there. And as I was really, really surprised that they contacted me. And here, I'm at a community college. I got a really good community college team. We're like the number one team in the state, and I think life's good forever. And as we went through that process, and I think looking back, I'm sure people are going, Steve, who? What do they think? But for me personally, it was an opportunity. And obviously you got to get a staff together, and you all both know what the relationship that Dave, Rose, and I have had. And it's funny because as community college coaches, he was an outstanding community college coach, and I had done the same. But we didn't really know each other that well. I mean, we'd made contact, and I'd gone down to a tournament down in St. George and got to know him, and we kind of developed a friendship there. But I don't think either one of us ever thought, looking forward, that I would be the head coach and that he would be my associate head coach. And, and 8 years later, he's the head coach at BYU, and I'm back at Fresno State. But that's how things are. And I never felt, it was always a positive vibe. I love the people that I work for, and people can question, there's, what was I thinking leaving BYU? But it was also something that I went back to family. I went back to a situation that I had a dear love for, and people talk about money and this and that. I you know what, that it's part of the process. But for me and my gut and feeling, it was like, this feels right. Going to BYU, having an amazing experience there, turning a program around, and then going to Fresno and trying doing the same thing. Looking back today, realize how difficult that process was going to be and what it was. But I just think in your heart, you make decisions. If I made decisions that I look back on and things in my life that I could have been better or should have maybe rethought this, yes. I don't think any of us, when you go through this process, but when I look at the football situation at Utah and, and what Kyle's doing, and there's nothing about that to me doesn't make sense. And he gave them everything at Utah, and he had a great staff. And there was coaches from BYU, coaches from Utah that are going with Kyle, and I believe that's what a great honor. What a great honor. And it's not taking anything from Utah. They have an outstanding football program. In the past, they've had amazing basketball there. It's a great institution. But going to Michigan is another level and next step. And anybody that's going to begrudge him for leaving, they're just not very smart. and really, not really good people and kind. And a guy gives you everything that Kyle gave, and then people are going to be critical of him and criticize him. Blow those people off. That's insane. It disgusts me that conversation even takes place. And so I'm happy for Kyle. I'm happy for his staff, the guys that have, the guys from BYU and Utah and other places that they've come to develop a great staff. And I'll always be their fans. It doesn't matter to me. Yes, I love BYU, but I love my experiences with coaches at Utah and watching from afar, football, basketball, and it just doesn't make sense that people would have that kind of an attitude. Just very narrow-minded, and honestly, with you, I'm not interested in hearing the nonsense that's coming out from some of these people on radio and TV.
It's one thing when it happens with with coaches, but now it's happening with players with the transfer portal. The Texas Tech is getting Cincinnati's quarterback for $5 million. The TCU quarterback's going to Indiana. The ASU quarterback's going to Kentucky or LSU, reportedly for at least $5 million. Iowa State's quarterback is following his coach to Penn State. So do we have to take the same attitude towards players? Because then in the era you coached and even more recently, even just 5 years ago, people like to sit in the stands and look out and I know that guy. I know his story. I followed him for 4 years. Well, that's out the window.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I look at the opportunities, I mean, you talked about the NIL, let's start with the transfer portal. I mean, I never saw that coming. Has it impacted collegiate sports? Absolutely. And, and I think as a player who sometimes, when I was coaching and guys would come and they would leave and they'd go and do different things, it was always hard for coaches to lose guys or find out somebody's going somewhere else. It seems like they're not loyal. What you committed to going to BYU or you're committed to going to Utah or Michigan, whatever it was, you felt like, hey, you know what? You decided to come here. Well, that's not the environment we live in anymore. And I mean, you just take a look at the transfer portal and guys being able to play in 3 or 4 programs in 3 or 4 years. I mean, I don't love that, but that's what it is, and it's not going to change. And no matter how much I gripe about it, that's what it is. And NIL money and the fact that guys are making millions of dollars, yeah, it didn't feel right. But I've lived long enough and seen this, and that's what it is. And we're now paying college athletes significant amounts of money, and that's the world that we live in. That's what the NC2A and all the governing bodies have decided to go. That's what they're doing. And I think for a long time, universities, schools, you guys have heard this, that millions and millions of dollars are being made, and student athletes aren't really benefiting from it. And it wasn't that way in 2005, and it wasn't that way in the late 90s, but it is the way it is today. And for me personally, I don't begrudge any young man who has an opportunity to improve himself in his circumstances financially or in a different school. I've kind of wrapped my arms around that and said I'm good with it. It's not the perfect world that I grew up in as a coach, but if that's what it is now, then good on you. And it's not just BYU and Utah. It's 300 different Division I schools that are changing and going through this process. And I just don't see any purpose in fighting it when that's what it is. And guess what? Student athletes are benefiting from this. Coaches are benefiting from this. And that's just what it is. And I know it's difficult to have coaches lose guys, but I think everybody's gotten used to the fact now that you're going to lose guys sometimes, and you're going to have to pay people to play. Those were things that would be disgusting and talk about 10, 15 years ago and think, what is going on? It's crazy. It is. But we have to just wrap our arms around it, get a feel for it, take a deep breath, and realize that this is the world we live in. Let's make good decisions. It doesn't take anything away from coaching staffs or players who have worked hard. And I get it. I get it that young people are now being paid significant amounts of money. And if you ask me if I'd like it to go back the old way, no. Because I think athletes were taken advantage of, and we didn't see the big picture and all the monies that were being collected and put into university programs, no more. And so that may surprise people that I feel that way, but this is the world we live in. Embrace it, get after it. The principles and the ethics of the game, I can't address because I've not really been or seen or situations, and I'm sure there are some things that are kind of upside down. But right now, it's in front of everybody. This is how we play the game. This is what it's going to be. It's probably never going to change for a while. I can live with that. And I can live with that. And I don't begrudge players. I don't begrudge coaches for leaving and going to another program that they can enhance their own livelihood and their families and the benefits there. That's just part of what America is. And that's the world we live in.
The Cougars got a nice conference opening win at Kansas State, and they had almost double the average turnovers, which is 10, and they had 19. AJ had 7 of his own. And watching that game and going back to my beat days in college and listening to you and guys like Majerus talk about conference play, it takes on a whole nother level. The game gets far more physical, and that was AJ's first conference game, and they're trying to rough him up and body him as much as possible. And I do think that's a learning experience, and I doubt the rest of the season we'll see 7 turnovers from him individually because that's way too many, obviously. But with that in mind, I'm assuming from what I know of you that game was par for the course when you get into conference play, and that's what you should expect every single time you play.
I completely agree. And I think the thing, too, now is in getting in conference play, you go through the first 10 or 11 games and you're 12-1 and you haven't had a close game. And, obviously they had a loss. BYU had a loss to UConn. But when you get into conference play, the physicality of the game changes. And I think that, number one, the competition changes. I mean, playing these preseason games where you're winning by 30 and 40 points, yeah, that's part of the process. You get bye games, you do that. That's what it is. But when you get to conference play, it's a whole different thing. Playing on away in someone else's, convention center or arena, with 10, 20, 30,000 people screaming and going crazy, the intensity of the game, of just the competitiveness that takes place, it's just so much more fun to watch. And, you look at the Kansas State game, it was a 10-point game. AJ goes 24, he gets beat up. I mean, it was the physicality of that game was, we hadn't seen that in the last, 6-8 weeks of games. And but still, AJ 24, Tata had 11 and 16 rebounds.
Yeah.
What an amazing asset, this young man. I think about watching him play earlier on and then seeing him play now. It's just incredible to see. And Saunders has been who he is. Wright is a guy that this team is not what they are today if he's not in this. I mean, maybe they could have had someone else, but Wright has been a special addition to this team. And having the leadership and having his ability to get the ball to places and get the ball to guys and transition and in a half-court game, I think for me, if you're going to ask me who's been the biggest difference maker for me watching this team, it's Wright. And, every night it's, double figures. The other night against Kansas, 18, 4, and 5. He makes things happen. He hits big shots. He's he just has that experience of he doesn't play nervous.
No, he didn't get rattled.
Doesn't get rattled. His composure is amazing. And if I was going to give a guy the player of the month or whatever, or when we look back on this season, wherever they get, if they get to a Final Four, they win a national championship, they go to a Sweet 16, whatever happens, it doesn't happen if they don't have someone like Wright. And with his composure and ability to lead. And I watch it. You guys do the same thing. I mean, I'm watching games. I go there and watch games. I'm watching the players. I'm looking at what facial expressions. I'm looking at coaches, because those are the things that I dealt with as a coach. And I just see a lot of leadership on this team. And, and AJ's been thrown into a world where he'll be in the league next year and there's all sorts of this and that. And that's tough to embrace and deal with. I think he's done a nice job of it. I know the couple of times that I've met him, he's just really personable, kind, and very respectful. And I watched him as he practiced in preseason. So he's obviously a special talent. But if you ask me, the two guys that have had the biggest influence on this team this year are Wright and Keita. And Keita has so improved, and just dominating the boards and attacking the rim offensively and defensively. Fun to watch different guys. I don't think 3 months ago we'd sit there and be talking about the huge influence that Wright and Keita have made. But obviously, they've been special. And if this team's going to go ahead and win a conference championship or get to deep run in the tournament or get to a Final Four, those two are going to be a big part of it.
Thought the most interesting word you threw in the middle of that answer was transition, because watching that game, seeing the physicality and all that, it feels like there's a pick your poison moment for BYU opponents now. There's very few teams of anyone who match up with Keita's size, physicality, athleticism, and relentlessness on the backboards. So I think most of them have to decide to defend with rebound with numbers. But if they do that, then BYU's transition game just carves them up. DeBance in the open floor is a nightmare. Right in the open floor is a nightmare. So if you were prepping for this team, would you be getting numbers back because you're worried about Wright, DeBance, Saunders, everybody else in transition? Or would you be committing numbers to the glass because there's no other way to deal with Keita? And if he gets 16 boards, that's going to kill you too.
I think it's a point well made, because you're thinking about those players that we've talked about. And Keita he's a bonus. I mean, we watched him play the last couple of years. This year, he's taken it to another level, how he protects the rim and how he gets up and down the floor. I mean, he runs like a gazelle. He's bouncing around. He gets his hands. He's got a motor unlike anybody else on that team. I mean, his motor is at a whole different level, offensively transitioning, defensively transitioning, relentless to the boards. You just can't, teams don't have guys like that. And not only do we have the talent of AJ and Saunders and Wright, you see the things that they bring to the table and their ability to score. But if you're asking me who's had the biggest influence on the success of this team, it's Keita. And I guess the word is he's relentless, and his motor is always on, and it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. And when you're worrying about how we're going to guard AJ and how are we going to guard Saunders and how are we going to guard Wright, how are we going to deal, the focus of a game plan is going to be on what can we do to take things away from them. And we saw the physicality in the last game, and AJ was just bounced around. Well, welcome to Big 12 basketball. Yeah. And that's what it's going to be like, night in and night out. They'll get used to it. They'll get tougher, and I think they'll adjust just fine. But for me, looking at this team, Wright and Keita are the guys that really, if you take your point guard and your five-man and you consider what they've done in the preseason and what they're now doing in conference play, BYU's a scary team to play. And now, mind you, I say that, but you're looking at a league where, did we forget about Houston? Did we forget about TCU or Arizona, who was 1 or 2 in the country? I mean, we're talking about BYU and who they are and what's going on. But this league is going to be really competitive. You can't sleep on anybody, especially that top 5 or 6 teams that all have a chance to be in the tournament, to get to a Final Four. Man, it's going to be fun to watch, and I can't wait to. It's so much fun to go to those games in person. And occasionally, I can't do that, and you watch them on television. But just getting close and being close enough to see the expressions and the anger and the energy and all the things that come with college basketball, and to see the excitement of the fans, and there's 20,000 folks or 19,000 at BYU going to those games. Very special time. Love being there, and love a coaching staff. Mind you, we're in a different world today. You guys, I know we haven't talked about it, but it's so funny for me to see 18 guys on the bench.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Coaches outnumber the players.
But yeah, but that kind of is kind of the way it is, and man, it's working. So don't mess with it. But that's probably the biggest adjustment for me. I don't know how you deal with that many people, but I like the 5, 6, 7 guys, who were. It was easier to control that and not be overwhelmed by it. But man, they're doing everything. Kevin Young is a special coach. He's got a great staff, and I love watching our team play. And there's some great opportunities here, and you'll see how it all plays out. But this is a team.
Right at the end of interviews, we seem to be having problems. Oh, you're back now. Okay.
It's not going to be a surprise to me to watch this team do special things this year, and you'll contributions from everyone. And then I go back to the coaching staff is just superb, and there's just such a good feel about watching them and the intensity which they play. So hang on, everyone. I think what we're about to watch is going to be really fun and really special for the fan base.
He's Steve Cleveland. He joins us every week right here on The Zone. Thanks, Steve. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.